So there's a huge old school tournament going on called the Winter Derby with close to 200 players, 8 rounds, cut to top 16, and today we got all the deck pictures from the top 16. So this is a 3-parter. First, let us look at deck pictures. That is always fun. Second, let us look at some analytics and some stats. And third, I can tell you how I went in the Winter Derby. So yeah, that's the 3 parts. Let's take a look at 16 decks. Okay, the first deck, Benjamin Parker. He went 8-0 in the Swiss, and this is a lion deck with the 12 bolts and all that. I can't talk very long about every deck, so let's go through them pretty quickly. But you can pause the video if you want to look at it more. So a lion bolt deck. The second deck, another lion bolt deck. Player named Jason, he also went 8-0, so there were 2 8-0s in this tournament, and the rest of the top 16 is 7-1, and 2 players went in with the 6-2. So a lion dip bolt deck at second. Third, Claus, also lion dib bolt. And Richard, here's something a bit new. Richard isn't playing red. He opted to play a lot more creatures, and the sword to plowshares. Sword isn't great when you combine it with burn spells, but if you have a bunch of good creatures, sword is really good. So I really like this build. Number 5, a troll disco, Sedge troll, Nevral's disc, dib hypnotic, good stuff. Number 6, Ty. I'll just call this a Zoo deck. You have Curd Apes and Argotin Pixies, dibs, and blue for counter spell and power. So number 7, Pancho. This is like a mid-range deck. It had a lot of similarities with the deck, but instead of Jayemdae Tomes, he's playing more big creatures. Number 8, Rob. Lion dib. No red. Number 9, here comes the deck from Aaron. But he's playing 2 Sylvan Libraries. I found that's interesting. An Abyss and Moat and 3 Jayemdae Tomes. Number 10, Rich. The deck. Main deck Amnesia. That's cool. Number 11, Nicholas. Troll disco deck again, but it's cut down a bit on the troll disco part. There are 4 trolls and 3 discs, but there are also 2 Jayemdae Tomes, 3 control magics main deck. So yeah, this is a pretty cool control deck. Number 12, Stefan. Let's call this a Zoo deck. The Curd Ape and the Lion, Pixie and Urnam and burn spells. Once again, you have a lot of creatures. 16 plus factory, that's 20, so we can play Sword to Plowshare because he isn't a burn deck, but there are some burn decks just to clear the way for all the creatures. Koos at 13th place. Lion dib bolt. 2 orcs. This really solid deck. I like this one. Number 14, Hank. Yeah, blue-red orcs. Counterburn. One of my favorite decks. Good to see. Number 15, Stefan. Here is another the deck. 3 Jayemdae Tomes, but Stefan is playing with 4 Serra Angels main, so that's not like the usual build, but it's a really aggressive, and you can end matches in a timely fashion. So in the sideboard there are a few dibs, so you can really go aggressive. And number 16, John, the people's champ, mono green. He's not even splashing black for terror or anything like that. This is just mono green, aggressive. Yeah. So when I did the stats and all that, this deck doesn't fit at all. So there are like 15 decks that have a lot of similarities, and then is number 16, who is totally different. So that was the 16 decks. So stats. So I put my limited Excel skills to use and made this. So that's player 1, 2, 3 and 4 and up on the top, and you can see, for example, Savannah Alliance. If everyone was playing for Savannah Alliance, there would be 64 Savannah Alliance, but like almost half the players in top 16 played Savannah Alliance, so there are 28 of those in the top 16. Likewise the Serendi Efret at 29, and a good amount of Serra Angels, 14. Suchi only 8, so that was a bit low. I feel like in a lot of Swedish tournaments the Suchis are all over, but they do die to all removal. So interesting to see that they wasn't played a lot. Only 6 orcs, 2 Atogs. So the Atog archetype wasn't there. You can take a look at, we call it the 12 bolts. That's a lightning bolt, chain lightning, psionic blast. Those were played a lot. Of course, lightning bolt is the best one, then psionic blast, and then chain lightning. Sword and disenchant, a lot of those. Divine offering, main deck, only 5. So it's often like those 3 disenchant and 1 divine offering type of slip splits. Counter spell, 29, a lot of those. Basic LAN, kind of feel like that's a bit interesting. You can see a lot of the top decks didn't have any basics. Like player number 14 had 5. That was the counter burn, and he's also playing with Blood Moon. You can see it down below. So he had 5 basic lands, and other than that is a lot of zeros, 1s and 2 and 3. There were a couple of control magics in main deck. That is a bit spicy at least, and everyone were playing City of Brass except for the green player, number 16. You can see that number 16 row is pretty blank. And City in a Bottle, there weren't any City in a Bottle main deck, but there were 8 in the sideboards. So not a lot of blood. No, I meant City in a Bottle. So there were 8 City in Bottles in the sideboard. So not a lot of basics. Only 2 Blood Moons. So Blood Moons would be good in this meta game. City in a Bottle. Perhaps City in a Bottles was bad. There weren't that many City in a Bottles in the top 16, so maybe the player who played City in a Bottle didn't make the cut. Perhaps. So that was the stats here. So what is the meta game now in Swedish old school? Well, there's a lot of 12 bolts, Savannah Alliance and all that. There was 3 the deck and 2 Discord Troll, so 5 decks out of 16 was like control decks, and the rest of the decks were really aggressive. So and there weren't that many Suchis, so often a great way to fight against these aggressive decks is to have Divine Offering in your deck, and you can take out Su-Chi, remove a creature, gaining 4 life and all that. But since they're not playing with Su-Chi, Divine Offering isn't that good. Those burn decks are really hard to beat. If they can have those god draws where you have no chance at all, but a lot of times it's end up in top deck mode, and they top deck Chain Lightning, 3 to the face, and they top deck a Bolt, and you're dead. So how to beat this meta game? So of course it isn't an easy answer for it, but there's like this rock paper scissors thing with aggro, mid-range and control. Aggro loses to mid-range but beats control, and control loses to aggro and beats mid-range and all that. If the metagame is really aggressive, perhaps going a bit bigger would be good, and of course having some ways to gain a few life. I'm not a fan of Ivory Tower. I do like Fountain of Youth. I think that's a good card to get you out of Lightning Bolt range. Often you don't need that much. So how did it go for me in the Winter Derby? Well, I got really close. I went 6-2, and there were one match I lost against a 12 bolt deck where he had a library and I didn't, and there was a mulligans and some yeah, like underwhelming draws, so I couldn't do anything there. And there were I lost, and the other match I lost was against like a green aggressive deck, and it came down to 3 games, and in game 3 I had 2 angels in play and some Fountain of Youth and all that, but he managed to kill me exactly. So I think if he didn't kill me then, I think if I had 1 more life, I think I would have won it, and then would have been 7-1. But yeah, really close. But let's take a look at my deck. So here, this is my first tournament playing the deck. I tried to make it like my own version. So the story for me to get here is I've played a lot of triple S decks, the Savannah Lions, Su-Chi, Angels, and all that. And often when I do that after sideboarding, my deck really often looks like this. I was thinking about like almost every time I'm sideboarding, I take out Savannah Lions. The only time I keep in my Savannah Lions is when I'm playing versus the deck. So I was thinking that if my deck ends up looking like this every time I sideboard, perhaps that should be my main deck. So that was like the backstory for me going this way. So in the decks there are the usual suspects like the Counterspell, Disenchant, Sword, Jayemdae Tomes and all that. But if you notice, I'm not playing red and I'm not playing green, so that makes my mana a bit more consistent. I can cut 1 City of Brass and go down to 3, and I think that's really important because I have a City in a Bottle main deck, and there's also a City in a Bottle in my sideboard. And often when I take in my City in a Bottle from the sideboard, I remove 1 City of Brass, so then I'm down to 2 City of Brass. So I'm cutting red, and often red in main deck is 2 lightning bolts and a fireball. So instead of those 2 lightning bolts, I have 2 maces, and instead of that fireball, I have a Wrath of God. And of course I don't have a Mirror Universe like the deck do. There are 2 angels main deck. I do like to finish my matches in a timely fashion, and 2 more angels in the sideboard. Those are great if I'm playing against like aggressive green deck or a 12 bolt deck or anything like that. I need to finish the game fast, so I go up to 4 angels. after sideboarding. In my sideboard there are also 3 Fountain of Youth. They have been working great for me. Some of the matches I would have died if it weren't for the Fountain of Youth. Of course, if it was another card instead, perhaps that would have been better, but I very often feel like it comes down to a couple of life points late game, and having that fountain just ticking up 1/1/1 all the time is really good, because it sucks to use your counter spells on Chain Lightning late game. You wanna keep it for something that really matter. Other than that, I have 1 recall. Those are really good in main deck, and I have a Time Twister, and that is like the big debate. Do you play recall or do you play Time Twister? I did go for a 1-and-1 split. I often take them out if I'm not on the play after sideboarding, of course. But I think it's really good to have those good top decks that can really bring you back when you're far behind. Just like balance, I like to keep balance in. And it's also good, really good in mulligan decision when you mulligan down, and often you mulligan down to 5. Once in this tournament I mulligan down to 4 and I actually won. But then you need cards like balance and Time Twister and all that to get you back. So yeah, just some a chance to get lucky. But a lot of times you have that Time Twister in your hand and you don't play it. But often those games are the games where you are ahead and you don't need to play the Time Twister. So it's just sitting there in my hand for a rainy day or something. There are another Wrath of God in my sideboard. Really good. I do like Wrath of God combined with maces. Maces makes them, they have to commit more creatures to the table, and then you can cast Wrath of God. 2 blue blast, a power sink for more counter magic. In my sideboard are 3 divine offering and 1 disenchant. In some matchups you just remove your disenchants and upgrade them to divine offerings, but having 4 more disenchant effects in my sideboard where it was too much. I didn't get completely done with my sideboard plan, and suddenly the tournament started and I had to send a deck picture, and okay. But I noticed that even when I'm playing against robots, I don't have space for the 3 divine offerings and a disenchant in the sideboard. So yeah, I think one of those could have been another Jayemdae Tome. So I think this deck is really strong against the field. You can play several versions of the deck. Some versions are easier to go top 8 with, and some of those other decks that are like more controlish than this is really good in the deck mirror, but having a more hard time to get to top 8. So I think this deck have a great chance of going top 8. It's really robust, it's consistent, it has a lot of answers to creature strategies, and if I do meet the deck, I don't feel like I'm favorite, but I have a pretty good chance. I think like the deck versus the deck, I think the City in a Bottle is like a trump card. Having access to 2 of those in the deck mirror, so one of the decision makers in the deck mirror is 1 player having a Library of Alexandria. If I have a Strip Mine, a Chaos Orb, and the 2 City in a Bottles, I have a lot of answers to my opponent's library. Another thing it comes down to its card advantage with the Gem-Day tomes and all that. I have a lot of ways to remove my opponent's Gem-Day tomes, and I have a lot of angels to often the deck pair will sideboard out like two of the 4 main deck swords, and perhaps I'll go up to 4 angels and try to win it a bit faster. And also I'll bring in the recall and the power sink versus the deck. So yeah, so I feel like I have a great chance versus the field. I have a decent matchup versus in the deck mirror and all that. So yeah, this is my deck. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you have any questions or things, anything you feel like I'm wrong about. I'm not an experienced deck pilot, but this is like the Farmstead deck or some blue-white control. I don't know. Yeah, let me know in the comments below if you disagree with anything, and thank you for watching this one. And of course, my next video you will see some matches, okay? But it's fun to make some other things, so thank you and goodbye.